Hello everyone, this is Prolix for Sample Genie, and this is my second video production tutorial. Today I'm going to go through a few different elements of a track by me, which is called Here We Go Again, which was out on my label Tranquil Records. The reason I'm going to go through this is because I've been asked about kind of drum layering, but then also about kind of like general mixes, general kind of volumes of things, and also like mixing or what's on the master output really of a final tune, because personally I've noticed that when I've watched tutorials in the past that it's always the bit that people kind of seem to skim over, which was always one of the parts which I was most interested in. But so just for those of you who aren't familiar with the track, I'll just play it back quickly, and yeah, so you can hear how it goes.
Here we go, Kim.
Right, so that's how it goes. I'm going to mainly focus today on beats, but as you probably saw then when I was playing the song back, I brought up this little device. At the moment that's just showing the ridiculous noise floor on my computer. And basically it is a standalone spectrum analyzer, and it's hands down one of my most important probably pieces of kit. I kind of watch everything that I do through that. It's kind of, because it's standalone, I can play kind of anything back, films or YouTube or MP3s, and I can see like the musical kind of content through there. And so now I watch music almost as much as I listen to it, which is a bit sad, but for this I do find it really important when trying to get my mix right, seeing where certain elements sit in the mix. If I just solo the drums for now and you can just have a little listen. Right, so I'm just going to turn the mixer down a bit so I can speak while it's playing. Right. Right, so here's a spectrum analyzer. You'll see it's kind of very clear where all the elements are sitting in the mix. There's a 250 hertz snare, which is kind of louder than everything else, certainly like the fundamental of it, the thud is. The kick is actually kind of quite high pitched. It's peaking at around 100 and 125, and the tops are all kind of quieter than all of that, and that's usually how I have everything sitting. I'll just go through the elements. Right, so this is like the basic kick snare pattern. And as you can hear, the snare is kind of dull, and the way that to give it kind of like that brightness and the width that I think people are kind of looking for sometimes in their mixes is by adding claps. This is kind of like an electro clap, which I'm triggering through Contact. I think it's a Vengeance clap. And you can hear it kind of just adds that tail and that kind of white kind of noise. Kind of, it makes the tops a little bit more exciting. I'll play it back again. Now when I was making this break, I really wanted the clap to be kind of, or certainly like the wash or reverb kind of sound from the snare to be really wide, and so I've actually added a second clap which is wider than the other one, and if I just play them together you'll be able to hear what it does. This is the first one on its own, and now if I add the second one in, you should be able to hear and actually see that it gives you much more width, and so the break just sounds kind of wider. I mean, I don't often use reverbs on the snares as much as having kind of reverb or tails of claps, because it just kind of, I don't know, it's just the way I like doing it. So in this break we've got a little ride that just goes along the quarter notes. And we've also got this hat, which basically is just straight down the middle, no reverb on it. It's just a actually, it sounds like it does have a bit of reverb on it. Am I lying? Yes, it does have a bit of reverb on it. And what else is here? That's an open hat on the one. Some more ride action. But this is where the stereo stuff comes in. People have been asking about kind of stereo spread, stereo width and stereo field. I think the easiest way to get stereo in your tune, or the most basic way, is by panning. So even if you just get kind of like a simple element and just pan like some of them, you know, some of the parts of the drum kit left and right, as you would, or as if you imagine kind of a real drum kit as like you have a ride cymbal on one side and a hi-hat on another side, and the cymbals, you know, kind of spread across, you know, a field. So here, for example, this ride, that is over to the right a little bit. These hats are straight down the middle. This hat is straight down the middle. I'm sure I had some more stereo stuff. Oh, I think the actually I need to go further over here, I think. Yeah, this is the best example. When the song gets going a little bit more, we have these sets of shakers over here playing. And basically they're not exactly the same shaker, but they're playing a you know, they're both 16th, they're both playing, you know, similar kind of tempo, similar kind of thing. Except what I've done is I've panned one left, which is this one, and this one I've panned right by 49. And so when they play, they give this kind of stereo effect. They're not too dominant, but they're just kind of like those sounds your ears just kind of pick out every now and again, just to kind of make the drum sound a little bigger. So if I kind of like, there's a bit of wash here as well, which I think is panned a bit to the left. Have listen. So you get all that kind of like reverb and kind of stereo spread literally just by some very simple kind of panning techniques. Nothing too clever going on there. In fact, probably right, so this hat where it says hat crush, that shouldn't be playing right now because it's actually in the mix. It's going to a group called Hats Crush down here, which the sub is being sent to. And the reason it's being sent to that is so that when this hat plays, the sub distorts the hat when it plays, so you get this effect. It's kind of like something that Kamal would, I think in like System Bleed, used a lot, and a lot of people have used it, you know, even in Messiah it's used a lot, and a lot of people do it where you basically, I'll show you how it's done. You get your hi-hat, you send it to a group, in this case I've called it Hats Crushed, so that's being sent, so all of the volume is going straight to that, to this group down here. If I unsolo everything, just solo that. Then the sub, which plays here, that's having an amount on a send, so it's not it's going to its normal group, the bases group, but it's also having a part of it being sent out, and it's being mixed together with the hats over here and distorted using camel fat, Kramer, and then I'm high passing it, so you can't actually hear the low end anymore, but what you can hear is just the resulting kind of crush. So you can just kind of hear like some distorted hats every now and again. That's just a simple way of kind of like crushing the tops, just to get that kind of sound. It's not even an extreme version, but it's just for, you know, for this tune I kind of liked it, and a bit of altiverb reverb on the top. So yeah, so this section sounds like this. So you can hear those basses being or distorting that bass, distorting the hats. Right, so I thought I'd just show you quickly some of these mids. The way that I make them is usually make a sound in the same way that I'd made the samples for Sample Genie, and then I would take that sound and put it into Contact. That's my sampler of choice. I think it confuses some people, but I've been using it for so long that it just, you know, it does what I want it to do. It works for me. So so I just show you how I used it here for this sound. So this is a bass, a sample which I've bounced out. I think that original sound was just made in Massive, and what I've done is I've just started the sample start point just in a little bit, set up, this is a loop point, and that is the sample end point, and then I've just added a basic LFO. This is a volume envelope, so I've taken a bit of the attack off just so I don't get any clicks or pops. Brought the release down. It usually starts off at around 300, I think. Brought that down to about 90, and then the frequency over here, that's the frequency of the LFO, or the speed of the LFO. So that's actually quite high, it's quite fast. There's a fade in here, so you can, so it kind of doesn't, the LFO doesn't start for a little while longer. So that's that sound, and then this is the main, I suppose. That's that little resound. That's another Reese which I've made, basically distorted the hell out of, and then again it's just got a LFO on it here, doing that. I think this sound was made in Trillion. I find kind of sampling out sounds just best, because sometimes when you play things back from synths or soft synths, they sometimes never seem to sound the way that they did the time before you were playing it. So just to be safe, I always kind of bounce things out, and then it kind of gives me more control over how to kind of mess around with the sound. I mean, here it's kind of a, if I just like bypass all of these, that's that sound. And when I originally made it, so I just wanted to take the beginning off so you can get straight in there, and then with the LFO, it doesn't sound, I can't remember what I've done now. I think I've moved the start point to the wrong place, but yeah, with Contact, there's lots of, you know, ways of messing around with samples to get interesting bass sounds. Even simple things like you know, reversing a sound. You can get some cool sounds, or by pitch enveloping things. It's a, you know, a popular way of doing things. If you add a envelope here, pitch bend, put all these up, and an envelope, flexible envelope. In fact, I need to take reverse off for this. But anyway, there's lots of things you can do messing around with that. So I just want to show what I do with my buses and my master output, because definitely when I have seen these videos in the past, that's a bit that people kind of brush over. So this is now probably going to sound totally different because I've just ruined those two mids, but I'll show you what I've got on my master output. Right, so this is my master out. If I just mute those leads, because that's just sounding weird. So I'm just going to show you what I've got on my master. I have the Slate Digital, which I use, which is like a channel emulator, which is not necessary, but I just kind of like. It's a very subtle change to the sound, something which I like, but it's not kind of the be-all and end-all of this mix by any means. I actually have two EQs on the master of this, which is probably not what top engineers would recommend you do, and it's something that I try not to do myself, but I think I just found that this tune was a bit dull after having kind of worked on it for so long, and it just needed a bit of brightening. It's basically the lazy thing to do, and to be honest, I shouldn't be doing it, but that was just kind of adding some brightness to the end. This again is another Slate. It's again kind of just adding a bit more grit. It's kind of, imagine sending it through a mixer and just kind of giving it a bit of drive, a bit more saturation. And then the Sats and Bus doing a very small amount on the gain, also saturating it a little bit. And then it goes into my limiter here. I've used the Oxford limiter for ages and ages and ages. I just found it was the best one to use. So I'll just show you at what kind of levels it's going into. So you can see that the gain reduction here is basically just hitting on the snare. I think somewhere but around kind of 3 dB of gain reduction is, roughly a safe place to be. The attack's kind of as slow as it can go on this, and there's a little bit of softening. The release is fast. And this is the input gain that will be used to kind of drive the input into the limiter if it's not quite loud enough, or if it's too loud you can put it right down. But that's kind of the rough kind of levels that I set this limiter in order to get the RMS, which is just the average volume. So you can see there it is around kind of minus 4 dB, which to be honest I think is like, that's a safe kind of level to go. I think mastering engineers will tell you that's insane, you shouldn't go that loud, but then you'll hear drum and bass tunes or dance tunes which definitely go louder than that. I won't name any names, but yeah, there are definitely people that push the limits. So I think that's kind of like a rough level, and like I say, by using this and by kind of using these kind of rough guides of like volume, I mean, I'm not redlining any of these channels. Everything's kind of like a rough kind of, safely within the margins of distortion. Everything here is nothing's going into the red, and then any kind of driving is done on the master. But I'm not saying that's how I do it every time. It's just kind of what I try and aim to do. Sometimes I forget, and I'll find that some of the channels are in the red, but it doesn't always make a great deal of difference. But yeah, so I just find that this analyzer is so helpful, just making sure your final mix or getting all your levels. I mean, this is obviously a bit lower at the moment because the volume down here, but you can see quite clearly like the sub, the kick, the snare and the tops, they're all at a kind of rough level, and you'll find that most of my tuning kind of adhere to that rule. And I think if anyone else wants like a rough guide of where to, how loud their instruments should be comparatively with each other, then that is like a good guide to go on. Anyway, I hope you've all kind of found that useful in some way, and yeah, I'll be on the Sample Genie Facebook. If anyone has any questions about this session, I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, thanks a lot.